in a brand new Bugatti. Oh, you run town, woke up in a brand new Bugatti. Oh, you run town, woke up in a brand new Bugatti. Head to my town.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to today's program, World is Day Commemoration 2015, powered by Cuso International. My name is Kwame Ananifrimpon. I'll be your host and moderator for this session. For the purpose of our listeners and viewers and streamers all over the world, I'd like our guest discussants to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Kwame. My name is A.K. Elim. I volunteer with GPI and I'm also a staff of Cross River State House of Assembly. Thank you.
My name is Basi Abang. I'm the Deputy Coordinator for Youth Action Nigeria, Cross River State Chapter.
My name is Godwin Uga. I work with Cuso ULIT Project. I'm the Project Manager for Natural Resource Management Policy.
Thank you very much once again and welcome to today's program. For the purpose of our listeners again, I'd like to just go through a brief about today's event, why there's a need for us to celebrate the 2015 World AIDS Day. Just a small recap. Celebrated every year on 1st December, World AIDS Day 2015 calls for expanding antiretroviral therapy to all people living with HIV, the key to ending the AIDS epidemic within a generation. Run by WHO as one of its global public health campaigns, World AIDS Day was first ever Health Day. Currently in the 28th edition, it was observed for its first time in 1988. The theme of the World AIDS Day 2015 is getting to zero, end AIDS by 2030. Now my question is it a myth or a reality?
I think it's a reality. If we all work together, individually, corporate bodies, religious groups coming together, we can achieve that.
Yes?
Okay, I also think it's a reality because if we are talking about 2030 in 2015, I don't think it's going to be empty talk. It's going to be not just talk, but laid out activities and implementation strategies to see that it works. So just like she said, if we have religious organizations, traditional authorities and gatekeepers, I think if we come out strategically and then plan, it's possible. It's a possibility.
Okay.
Mr. Kwame, I would like to differ just a little. I think it's over-ambitious. I mean, if we're looking at, say, 2050, then I can say, well, it's something we can achieve. But 2030 from now is about 15 years. And let's take a toll from, let's say, the MDGs before it became the SDGs. We said it's one of the targets was to eradicate extreme hunger and poverty, by 2015. If we go back and look at how much we've achieved in terms of halving poverty and hunger, let's say Nigeria, I think we are way back. We're far from achieving that target. So that, for me, would have been a lesson for us to learn to say, oh, whoa, look, maybe 15 years is never enough to, eradicate or handle or solve a problem such as serious as HIV/AIDS. Can we reduce our ambition and then look at probably 2050? Or rather, can we look at the statistics to say, okay, there are 20 million Nigerians that are infected. Oh, let's reduce this by half in 2030. For me, that would be more realistic than getting to zero. Looking at the theme for the World AIDS Day this year, getting to zero by 2030 is too ambitious, if you ask me.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get back to that question again because I'm expecting that we'll dig deep into it. But I still like your point so far. Looking at the awareness rate, from the statistics that I have here, it looks like it is universally even. If you look at men with 36 and women 33. However, the prevention knowledge in terms of prevention is very low. Why do you think that is the case?
I think that's the case because of lack of information getting across. Let's use the male condom, for instance, which is a means of prevention. Male condoms are everywhere. You walk into any chemist, you see a male condom. But female condoms are very rare. Most young women do not even know that we have female condoms. They don't even know how to use it or where to get it from. I think that's one of the major reasons.
Okay.
Okay, just to add to what she has said, I think it's also the fact that so many people, especially in the rural areas, still believe, even in the urban areas, they still believe HIV/AIDS is just a strategy put up to make people avoid going into illicit sexual activities. And then it's also a myth, so to say. Some people still believe it is superstition and all that. So if you have this mindset that is not real, it's very likely you wouldn't be interested in digging deep into wanting to know the preventive measures. Oh, it's okay. It doesn't just stop at knowing that, okay, there's HIV/AIDS, okay, but if it depends on what you think, what is your opinion, is it real? If it is real, you want to dive into getting to know, oh, what should I do to keep myself so that I don't get myself infected. Now, if you say it doesn't exist, you just go ahead and live your life. You're not interested in what happens. You're not interested in wanting to know whether it should be prevented or not. So I think that's a factor.
Yeah, also looking at, since when you read your introduction, said this was discovered in 1988. I think something is wrong somewhere if all this effort have been going on since about that time. What I think we should do is to look at the strategies we've been using and probably strengthen them or make them better or learn lessons from other projects or processes that have worked. Essentially, let's look at the geography of Cross River State, for instance, because I like to bring it down as much as I think global. I like to think local, act local. Yes. Look at Cross River State, the geography. The state is quite wide. I mean, this is one of those states where you can travel for 5-6 hours before you get to the end of the state. So because of that also, in terms of the mediums through which information is being disseminated, let's look, for instance, at CRBC, that's the Cross River State Broadcasting Corporation. The reach do not get to the northern part of the state, except that they have another station to complement this one, which is another Cross River State Broadcasting Corporation in Ecom. So for me, I think we still need to do more, because also judging for the fact that 60% of Cross Riverians live in the rural areas, how much information is getting to them? What kind of information are they getting? How much effort is being made, to ensure that people actually have a change of mindset so that, the prevalence rate can reduce. So these are the questions I think at this point we need to be asking as a state or even as a nation to see where these gaps, are and how to fill in the gap.
So can we just go straight? Can we list about 2 or 3 strategies that we can use? Just 2 or 3 strategies. Anything that can come out from you, any 2 or 3 strategies that we can use, you think would be very relevant to increasing awareness?
Okay, for me, I just want to mention one, which I think could be, I think is being used, but I think more effort still needs to be put in there. Looking at the religious institutions, the churches, the mosque. Many people go to mosque, many people go to church. Can we, strengthen efforts in reaching out to people through that? Because also I think when we go to the church and talk about issues like this, people easily have a change of mind. They'll be like, oh, this thing is happening in my church. Oh, they even brought a condom to church. It means it's a serious issue. It means condom is not a bad thing. Oh, my pastor can't even touch it. They see firsthand, and then that, I think, can also help them to have a change of mindset.
Okay, just to add to that, I was also going to talk about the religious group. I'm a Nigerian, but then we are very, very religious. And there is this myth that HIV could come from witchcraft. And once it's coming from a religious leader, the followers immediately adapt to it and agree for that to be true, which is a myth. So I think if we can work with all the religion leaders, convince them that HIV is real, it's not from witchcrafty, then I think that will help a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Well, just to add to that, you have taken you looked at the issue from the religious perspective. Now let's go down to the African perspective. Okay. Now, if these people should be informed, or the knowledge, awareness on HIV/AIDS should increase, there's need to break down information to their own language. I know we've done that over time. We have IEC materials, but I think there's need to do more. There's need to translate this words into simple languages, or even in their indigenous language. I think that way, if someone gets to read it in his own language, say, oh, she or he, whoever is reading will be able to identify with the particular language because it appeals to her in her own language. Then apart from that, talking about the fact that I think he said something that 60% of Perseverance live in the rural area. We can explore that. Like I see, he mentioned the fact that processes like that are ongoing, but then we should do more. We should explore making use of maybe town criers, have village meetings, town council meetings, and all that, where you get to talk to the key holders, the stakeholders, agenda setters. If you are able to convince them and make them understand categorically that HIV/AIDS is real, and they buy it, I think they would be able to also translate or step down the information to members of.
Also add to that, I think if you look at the trends of international support, development support recently, emphasis has always been on gender. And you see that almost every program have the gender component as a must. If that can also be enshrined in development programs, that for whatever program you want to implement or project, you must have this issue of HIV as a cross-cutting theme, and funding is made available for that. I think that will be another way, because a lot of NGOs carry out projects and programs, but they are focused on different sectors, but they don't look at the issue of HIV/AIDS. For me, I think no matter what project you want to implement in the community, let's say we're trying to look at a water or sanitation program, for instance, or you're looking at entrepreneurship or inclusive sustainable economic growth project, if the health of the people are at stake, I don't know who you're doing those projects for. So I think at the international level or fora, there's need to reinstate the fact that for every funding that comes to areas of high prevalence, for instance, they should make issues of HIV/AIDS a cross-cutting and a very serious issue in those programs.
Okay, let's come home. I believe that you are looking at it from the international point of view, but let's come home. Let's try to look at what we can do locally, even at a grassroots level. You mentioned the issue of superstition, which for me is very key, very important that we look at the issue of superstition. Many Nigerians lack accurate knowledge about the ways through which HIV can and cannot be transmitted. Only 28% of women and 43% of men in South-South zone have comprehensive knowledge about HIV/AIDS. And here, there's also almost half of both men and women in the South-South zone still believe that HIV can be transmitted by supernatural means. My question is, what role do traditional beliefs and practices play in an HIV/AIDS situation today? Do they help or hinder?
I think they hinder, because we have a big churches crusade. You see them bringing out someone and say, one old person from your family infected you with the HIV, and the entire congregation believes it. So they are hindering it.
Yeah, I think it hinders. Culturally, we believe nothing happens out of the blues, especially in this part of the world. For everything that happens, we try to tie it to a source, especially some spiritual sources. But for me, if you ask me, I think we can utilize that same challenge to become an advantage. We can still, just like she said, target these traditional institutions. Try to make them understand that, look, as much as you believe in witchcrafty, as much as you have these supernatural beliefs, some things are just physical. They are real, like HIV/AIDS. They make a clear distinction between what is spiritual and what is not from the traditional institution. That way also people will start having a rethink. That is just one way, but there are many others.
Well, if I have to add to what they have said, I think there's need for a total reorientation of the minds of our people, especially the people in the culture, in a traditional setting. Okay, I think that's when the issue of 2030 being realistic would be a problem, because it takes time. It takes time to reorient the people. It takes time to make the people see that, no, it is not your grandfather or your grandmother or whoever that is responsible for this. Now, you contacted HIV/AIDS because you were involved in risky sexual behaviors, or you were, apart from sexual behavior, we have other sources of there are other means of contacting HIV. You contacted HIV/AIDS or whatever the case is because you did this, you did that. So if we have to do that, it will take a whole lot of time. So I think in the underlying factor now is that there's need to do a lot of grassroots, education, campaigns to reorient their mind and, well, let's say, disabuse their mind of the fact that someone there is the cause of their problem.
For me also, I think the political leaders have a lot of role to play. Where's the willpower? How much is being committed to fighting this epidemic every budgetary year? Those are the questions. And how are this monies being spent? I mean, budgeting for them is one, implementing them appropriately is another. Who monitors what? Where do monies go to, where do aids go to? And who gets this support? Are they the right persons? So I think governance have a lot of role to play. So we need a lot of strong political will, because as much as possible too, the government has a role to play. Because I know in recent times there has been a lot of interactions and this good relationship between governance at the state level and even at the traditional level, at the local government level, at the community level. That's why you have a certified chief and then you have a village head. So one represents the government. So we have the government's presence in all this. So the government still have to come in because they have a lot of role to play. Because also if they create the enabling environment, for the support to come from even outside, and also the enabling environment for the little they have to implement, inwardly or in the state, I believe a lot, could still be achieved that way.
Okay, there's a school of thought that subscribes to that session that there can never be social change without the political will of government. And so that's just what I believe you've made mention of that. Now let's talk about stigmatization. We know it's a very, very important issue when you're talking about HIV/AIDS awareness and prevention and how to deal with people and, the mindset and all that. How, most people find it very difficult to kind of let their status be known. One of the reasons is being stigma. And we all know how stigma affects people living with HIV and AIDS. How do we deal with stigma? I believe that most of our listeners and our viewers and those streaming would love to hear something on this subject.
Well, stigma is a terrible thing because I think when the pandemic actually became known to people, one of those things that killed a lot of people was stigmatization. I've heard of a story of a young boy after realizing he was HIV positive, had to stab himself to death. It was as bad as that. You and I know in time past, people living with HIV/AIDS cannot get jobs. Once your status is known, you can't be employed. It means you're cut off from the rest of the world. So stigma has a lot of impact, on the individuals that are living positively, especially in the past, with living with HIV/AIDS. For me, I think a lot of awareness still needs to be created. At this point, I'll still go back to malaria. We can have malaria here, suffering from malaria, but we still interact. You can go to the hospital and still hug someone with malaria. So I think when the pandemic, was discovered, the outcry was high. And then because we didn't really understand what it was, everybody was like, oh, if you have HIV and AIDS, you're dead. It's like you're trying to mingle with a dead person. So we need a reversal of that. We need to play down, though it's a serious issue, but we need to play down on it. That look, someone having HIV doesn't mean he's going to die or he's dead. There are people like, I think, is it Magic Johnson, a basketballer, I think he's living positively and he's living fine. You can draw examples from people who have lived, longer than even those that don't have HIV/AIDS. Draw examples from there and let people know that it's not a death warrant. It's just that we need to change our behaviors. It has to do with behaviors. That if you do well, even the person living positively, if he takes good care of himself, avoid having contact. Because for some that have HIV/AIDS, they want to revenge. Like, oh, I have it, everybody must have it. And thereby they kill themselves even more. So the more awareness we have out there, the more we can downplay on the fact that anyone that has HIV/AIDS is still a human being. It still can blend in the society. They still have a lot to contribute, both socially and economically, to the advancement of the society. You know, so.
Yeah, I think it's just to increase the level of awareness, like in the rural area. We have to make people know the mode of transmission, rather than thinking or having the misconception that if you sit with someone having HIV, you are going to contact it. That's one of the reasons why people shy away from those with HIV. Maybe your child is in school and you know the teacher has HIV, and because of that you change your child from that school because you have that fear that your child is going to contact HIV from the teacher. I think it's just creating awareness, let people know the mode of transmission of HIV. That way we can solve the issue of stigmatization.
All right, thank you. I think to a greater extent, there's need, we've been talking about awareness. Now, it will make more sense if someone who is already living positively comes up to take the mandate of creating the awareness. Now, it's not just doing it alone, but identifying, coming up with a support group of people living positively, and perhaps people who are successful in their businesses, maybe in politics, in different areas and walks of life. Now, if you have this team of people living positively, creating the awareness, I think the stigmatization will drastically reduce. Because if you want to say, oh, I won't talk with this one, oh, you don't want to talk to me, perhaps I'm a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, oh, I am the owner of this fleet of businesses or conglomerates. If you see, I'm a professor, I'm a doctor, I'm this, I'm doing that. Now, if you get to see people with those people who are well placed in the society, coming out to say, oh, I am living positively, but I'm living positively, but I can achieve every other thing. That way, the tendency to stigmatize them would drastically reduce.
Yeah, and I still want to just add that the government still has a role to play, either we like it or not. Policies. You know, I think there have been some effort by the government to make it a crime if you stigmatize. You know, I mean, policies can also help us in eradicating the issue of stigmatization. In terms of policy that has to do with employment, for instance, in terms of policy that has to do with basic interaction. I mean, this can also go a long way to help eradicate stigmatization.
Okay, well, just to add to that, it will interest you to know that recently, Cross River State passed the Equal Opportunities Bill to law, and then in that law, there's a clause that captures people living with HIV/AIDS. So I think that's a move in a positive direction.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I also got some information from our research department on the issue of testing. And it's obviously men are more likely than women to know where to get an HIV test. Urban residents are more likely than rural residents to know where one can get an HIV test. And also the testing rate has also gone low. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, I think it still borders down to the issue of awareness. Yes, we've been doing a lot of work on HIV/AIDS counseling and testing, but there's still that fear, you know, there's still that fear in people. What if they get to know that I am HIV positive? What happens? Okay, now, even when it is clearly stated on, you have a lot of IEC materials in those test counseling centers that it is confidential, they still have this fear that, no, if he gets to know, he's going to tell everybody. So I think the issue of hammering on the fact that voluntary counseling and testing is what is confidential. If you don't want it to be made known, it will not be made known. And then again, the issue of stigmatization, I think is a strong factor. It has contributed to, you know, the rate at which people go for voluntary.
So it's still on the issue of stigma.
Yeah, I would like to take it from the point of gender. If you look at the Nigerian society, for instance, the male are ascribed socially to be those that fend for the family. So most times you have the men living in the rural areas even faster than the women. You have the men living quicker than the women because also they don't have to stay at home and take care of the kids, do the household chores and all that. So the men are always more liquid. So they move very easily, either from the rural area to the city or even to bigger cities in search of jobs, in search of opportunities and the rest of them. So that way they get to get more information than the women. You know, so it's something that has to do with gender, the roles, you know, that has been ascribed to us, especially in this part of the world. Our men move, either we like it or not, more than the women.
I think it's still a stigmatization because a woman may feel someone seeing her, maybe a relative, a church member, seeing her coming out from an HIV test center, they think she's HIV positive, so she shies away from going to do a test so that people won't think she's positive. So they believe it is the man that should go and do the test. That as long as the man is okay, they are okay.
So how do we encourage them to go to the test?
I think the underlying factor there has to do with awareness. We need to, put more effort in expanding our medium, the various.
Education.
Yes. Now we should incorporate that into our, like you said, you mentioned education, and an idea just came up. Now, who they think DPI Girls Power Initiative has liaised with the Cross River State Education Board, and then we have what we call sexuality, family life, and HIV/AIDS curriculum that is kind of built into their timetable and all that. So that way, if we use various medium, I think to a greater extent, all the issues we are having, all the issues surrounding it would be alleviated.
I think it's still an awareness issue. I think people need to know that it's not just through sexual intercourse or sexual activities that you can contact HIV. If they come to know that there are many other ways you can contact HIV, knowing that your partner may be negative while you are positive, I think everybody will have to go out to test just to be sure.
Yeah, for me, I think more effort still needs to be put into the issue of mobile testing and counseling. I remember then in those days, I don't know if it's still there, when GAIN was around, Global HIV/AIDS Initiative, they go to communities. They have this mobile kit they move with. So they used to go from communities to not just local government, they go right inside the rural areas where they may not have enough information to where they can get tested. So I think more efforts needs to be put into that so that we have this mobile counseling and testing in as many rural areas as possible. That way, people know where to go to because it's just by them. Because like I said, there are some rural areas, like there's a community down the road here in Akankpa. For you to get into the community, you might need to trek for like 4 hours before you get there. So persons like that may not have information on where to get tested, and then they remain the way they're. So more effort needs to be put into the mobile counseling and testing.
Okay. Now, today is also a day for young people. When you talk of HIV/AIDS, of course, you have to also talk about the role that young people themselves have to play, because if you look at the staggering figures that we are getting, it looks like adolescents, young people themselves are those that are facing issues the more. What advice do you have for young people? What general advice do you have for young people in terms of condom use, in terms of abstinence, for those who cannot abstain, those who can want to engage in active sex, condom use? What advice do you have for them?
I just have one word: know your status.
Well, for me, I would like to encourage young persons to take their future in their hands because they are the future of tomorrow. They need to engage in positive behavior, positive things that can enhance their future. Because no matter what effort to try, create employment for the young persons, try to make their lives better, if they are not healthy, if they are suffering from HIV and AIDS, I mean, it all goes down the drain at the end of the day. So they should take ownership of their future.
Okay, well, for me, I think, let me look at this from a gender perspective. Now, when you talk about young people, just like it's for the adult, with the girls, most importantly, they are always at a disadvantaged position. Now, if it is good, there should be programs. Is it community-based? Civil society should try to make sure they concentrate on gender-based programs that will help these young women to come out from their shell. Yes, it's actually a growth period for them as adolescents, and it's very likely that they'll have the tendency to be involved in activities like that. Then if they are made to understand that, yes, you're a woman, there's nothing wrong in, if you want to engage in sexual intercourse, initiating the use of condoms. I think to a greater extent, that would help, the spread of HIV.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming and joining me here on this program and sharing your thoughts and your expertise and knowledge on HIV/AIDS. I want you to give you one last chance to give a closer remarks, each of you, on the theme getting to zero by 2030. Is it attainable? Not a myth or reality. Is it attainable? Based on what we've discussed so far. To close this important.
Well, at this point also, I would like to say that it's attainable if we are serious. The same way we took control of the issue of Ebola, can we use the same approach? I mean, using all we have in our might to fight HIV. If you can take that line, toe that line, then I think we can achieve getting to zero.
I think you're coming home now.
Like I said earlier, it's attainable. If we all work together, the government, individually, religious group, traditional leaders, it's attainable.
Okay, I think we should come up with realistic strategies. That way, it's attainable.
Thank you very much for coming to this program. My name again is Kwame Ananifepon, Cuso International program that's handling this program and this project. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Woke up in a brand new Bugatti. Oh, you're on time. Woke up in a brand new Bugatti. Oh, you're on time. Woke up in a brand new Bugatti. Head to my town at Calabar. Started from the garden and them know me. Them know me. 6 figures when them come. All about the money back to rent it. Me back down. Irani with the pro and the beat and the boys. Shut down. I just